The body may die, but never the soul, which is merely passed on. Souls flow onward, born and reborn, forever part of the great ether stream.
Why friends make grave here? Can we not take Biggie home to village?
He'd want to be buried where he fell. It is traditional amongst mercenaries.
I'm so sorry, Vandam. If only I hadn't listened to those people, you'd still be... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's not your fault. No matter what, those guys would attract us down eventually. What matters is that Vandam saved all our lives. For now, let's just be grateful to him for that.
You're right.
I won't forget your words, Vandam, ever. I'll fight my own war with Pyra.
Could Iona, the girl living with Minith, have originally been planned to be a direct descendant of Addam? While this train of thought started somewhat ironically, after noticing that her eye color is very similar to Rex's. By the time I reached the bottom of this rabbit hole, the resulting story potential ended up making way too much sense to have it be purely coincidental. While there is no definitive proof for it, the puzzle pieces just make too much sense to dismiss it outright. So maybe I'm just going crazy over here, or perhaps this was once an intended plot point that ended up on the cutting room floor to meet the game's release date. With that said, let me present my case, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. As previously mentioned, the most obvious connection to Addam is her eye color, which is identical to Rex's. While blades like Nia and Mithra have similar eyes, with Mithra's likely being a result of her resonance with Addam. The only human characters with the golden eyes are Addam, Laura, Rex, Iona, and the King of Tantal, with only the last three of those living after the 500-year time skip.
Addam Origo, heir of Torna. Looks like that resonance isn't just for show. You're too kind. Golden eyes. I thought Tornans all had blue eyes. You're a bastard, is that it? My father is generous. He pays no attention to things like that. You're wrong. You don't understand the consequences. Don't I? And you don't understand what humans are. Malos, the all-knowing. A diligent student, you could say.
While the golden eyes originally serve as the symbol of a bastard child with a half-Tornan heritage, shown in both Addam and likely also Laura, who was raised in Torna's outskirts under extremely poor conditions. After the time skip, the story instead uses the golden eyes as a symbol with which to draw references to Addam, be they bloodline related or of a more spiritual nature. On the matter of eyes, they are actually a much more prevalent thematic symbol in the Japanese dub that gets a bit lost in translation. Whenever a character refers to the sadness reflected in either a Jin's or a Malthus face, they use a special kanji that refers to a certain type of sadness, the sadness from missing a loved one, which obviously refers to Laura and Amalthus' mother. It's just one of the many ways in which the game draws parallels between the two diametrically opposed characters. Either way, the point of this little tangent was that eyes are actually extremely important within the game's symbology.
Why did you look so sad back then? That was you too, wasn't it?
Father, why do you not answer my call? Mother, I've missed you.
This brings us back to the three characters of the present time: Rex, Iona, and the King of Tantal. The best one to start with is the King. While not directly linked to Addam, his bloodline is instead directly linked to Zetter, who usurped his brother's line of kingship after the Aegis War and likely established their cooperation with Intel, sinking the Titan and Ophian's control core into the Cloud Sea. While the King's eyes could be a result of him being only half Tantalese, I think the more likely answer is that they are meant to symbolize his rejection of Tantal's ties to Indal, the golden eyes thus being a sign of rebellion against their ties to the traitorous Zetter and a spiritual return to the more noble side of the family line. On that note, the most likely candidate for author of the mysterious diary chronicling the whereabouts of the third sword is none other than Zetter himself. Not only would it explain its jewel-crested design and how it ended up in the possession of Tantal's royalty, but it would also make sense from a story standpoint. Zetter did believe that he should have been the Aegis driver and that it belongs in the hands of pure-blooded royalty, so it makes sense if he tried to find it after the Aegis War. The idea of Zetter looking for the sword will also be important for the theory I'll propose later, but for now let us talk about the other two golden-eyed characters.
Certainly, I did give life to Malos, but when he acts, it's divine will.
The destruction of the world is the will of the divine.
Indeed it is. Malos is the instrument of destruction. Making the architect's will imminent takes many able hands.
In Rex's case, it really doesn't matter why he has Addam's eyes, or how exactly he is connected to Addam's bloodline, as he still serves as a living legacy to not only Addam but also Vandam. More on that one later. Well, he must have a blood relation with Addam, given his ability to open the crests. His family's unknown origin just adds to his nobody status. They could have come from another island of the archipelago or be connected to Tantal. The point still stands that their connection is more mimetic. This leaves us with the only odd one out, Iona. Even though she has the golden eyes, there is currently nothing that ties her to Addam. However, there are some oddities surrounding her which could point us towards an answer. Given how much more linear the game becomes after the Spirit Crucible, I think it is fair to assume that some of it might have been rushed to meet the game's release date. So I think what I'm about to propose might have been cut from the game to get it done in time. While there is no proof for it, all the setup is there for it, and I think it makes too much sense to be purely coincidental. Of all the people to live with, the only remaining golden-eyed character just so happens to live with none other than Minith, the last surviving member of Addam's former allies. And while Iona does have the Uraean blue hair and Uraean clothing, she actually isn't Uraean herself. On top of that, it is also rather interesting that they happen to live in Uraea, the base of Addam's loyalists during the Aegis War. What adds to this strangeness is that we never really find out how or why she lives with Minith. In fact, the game never even revisits Minith's storyline, and the stage play based on Vandam's Live, which the story sets up, is never followed up on. In a game filled with a ridiculous amount of setups, payoffs and interwoven plot lines that fly over most people's heads because my anime, having none of this revisited later, just seems at an extremely out of line with the rest of the game. So what if the reason this part of the game seems so odd is that the payoff for it was cut from the game? After the events of Torn of the Golden Country, Minith was the only comrade from the original team that Addam had left, and he even served as Addam's second blade in the story. So if something were to happen to Addam's family, like for example someone trying to hunt them down, I think it would make perfect sense if his family ended up with Minith if something had forced them to live undercover. If Iona was a direct descendant of Addam's family line, his granddaughter, it would not only explain her golden eyes, and why she lives with Minith in the city of Addam's sympathizers, but also why she looks Uraean but is clearly of another race.
Hear me, my scions. I am Addam Origo. This day I seal the Aegis, away from the world. But this seal is not for eternity. In anticipation of the day that humanity becomes worthy of the Aegis's power, I entrust her to posterity. She is our hope. When mankind has matured and learned to live better lives, she will answer your call and return to you. Trusting that day will come, I leave my final wish to you.
All of this could be explained if something caused Addam's family to live undercover. Speaking of which, we never actually find out where Addam went, only that he suddenly vanished one day. I think there are two likely possibilities here. He either tried to confront Amalthus after the attack on the refugee camps, or he tried to reach the World Tree. While he doesn't display this desire in the DLC story, Addam does talk about it in his conversation with Rex, although he never made it there himself. So the second possibility is that Addam tried to reach Elysium after the events of the Aegis War. However, since the path was already blocked by Ophion, this would have also eventually led him towards both Tantal and Indal. Thus I believe that the most likely scenario is that Addam one way or another died as a result of confronting Amalthus.
I have never been to this place. Once I sought to come here, but I never did.
What could have forced his family undercover is also pretty simple, either knowledge about the whereabout of the Aegis and the Third Sword, which Zetter was after as proven by the diary found in Tantal. It's also possible that parts of the Spirit Crucible might have originally been sealed behind crests that require a pure-blooded descendant of the royal line. And because that plot line was cut, maybe they just made it so now all Itherians can open the Spirit Crucible LPs. Don't know, but I would find it extremely amusing and fitting if Zetter went behind his co-conspirators back and tried going into the catacombs alone to claim the sword for himself, only to end up dying to some random critters.
Think I don't know that?
With all that said and done, here's the theory. Iona was originally planned to be a direct descendant of Addam's bloodline, whose family was forced to go underground with Mineth because Zetter and Amalthus were looking for the Aegis. This is likely also when Addam disappeared, probably dying while confronting Amalthus. So let's examine what consequences it would have had for the story if opening the Spirit Crucible had required Iona's help, and why it makes almost too much sense to be purely coincidental. If accessing the tombs required an actual pure-blooded descendant of Addam's line, and if Iona was one, this would require Rex to return to the home of his teacher at his lowest point in the story. There would have enough time passed since their last visit for Rex to read the script for Vandam stage play. This would lead to a symbolic return to Rex's roots and start of Rex's self-re-evaluation, which cumulates with the awakening of Numa. Additionally, Rock's awakening could have been delayed to the start of Chapter 7. Not only would this remove the god-awful start of Chapter 4, but simultaneously enhance one of the best scenes in the entire series. Instead of resonating with Rock in Chapter 4, his core crystal could have fallen out of Rex's bag when Nia punches him at the start of Chapter 7, revealing that it has begun glowing once more. This would not only put more weight to Rex's resonance with Rock, but would time up perfectly with a return to Iona, Mineth, and Vandam's legacy. Thus, in a roundabout way, Vandam's sacrifice would have saved them a second time by rescuing the key to the Third Sword.
Give it up!
Just go, Rex! Remember to fight your war!
Having to bring Iona with them to Litheria would also perfectly line up on another level of storytelling, since Mineth is already on death's door, wondering if he can even make it to the end of Rex's journey. His nearing death would also perfectly align with adopting Iona into Litheria's orphanage, thus, assuming she is Addam's descendant, symbolically and literally returning his bloodline to its roots, just in time for the resurrection of Addam's legacy, the awakening of the Aegis true driver. Not only would this plot line resonate with Addam's legacy, but having Rex adopt Iona into the orphanage would also make Vandam's legacy come full circle, as he used to do just the same in Garfront Village. Having Rex serve as a living legacy to both Vandam and Addam seems extremely poetic, as Vandam's grave just so happens to sit on the exact same spot where Addam once awakened Mithra. As the fight against Addam's ghost is already the only time we ever see him use Rock's weapons in any of the game's cutscenes, and returning to Urea would already establishes this callback to Vandam's teachings, it would have made perfect sense for Rex to use Rock's weapon to stab himself, similar to Vandam, to fight against Addam's ghosts. Double so, since the Spirit Crucible's effect functions very similarly to Abrona's ability, which Vandam circumvented with this same technique. Given the potentially deadly nature of this maneuver, it would have perfectly synchronized with the awakening of Nia's blade form and its healing powers. This would symbolically unify Rex's newfound conviction with Nia's, as she now uses the power which she didn't use to save Vandam because she was afraid of rejection, just as Rex gains the power of acceptance. And I think that would have been a perfect way to tie everything together.
Let's give him hell!
Ready?
Ready.
Rex, what is it that you seek? Wealth? Power? Dominion?
None of those, really. Though, power might be useful.
Power then?
Power to protect.
Protect what?
That's a long list. Gramps, Mia, Tora, everyone in Fonset, and Pyra, and Mithra.
You are greedy, boy.
Everyone in Argentum used to tell me that.
It is not necessary to protect everything. There is a limit to what one man can do.
That's true.
Listen, all I'm saying is, we've got our fight, and he's got his.
What he's doing is...
Yeah, it's bad. But war ain't about right and wrong. Power. That's all it is. And power can take many different forms. It depends on the heart of its wielder. If we don't use our power, just because we're scared of it, we're done for. As for who's right and who's wrong, no one knows for sure.
But there is something granted to you especially.
Please, tell me what it is.
The power to accept her. She is afraid of her own power and her terrible destiny. And I too was afraid. I feared the true power of the Aegis. Your will to fight comes from your will to protect. Blades and mortals are linked. When you take on the weight of all the fear she carries, then you will be her true driver.
So all we can do is protect what's important.
I think I understand.
We all got our own war, kid.
My... war?
While on the subject, I might as well add some more food for thought to leave you with at the end of this video. Rock's rainbow-colored peacock design and his Japanese name Suzaku, a vermilion bird that's roughly equivalent to the phoenix, also symbolize Vandam's teachings about the abstract nature of morality on the individual level of each person's unique war. While their actions are undoubtedly evil, he instills within Rex the ability to understand his enemies. You could say it represents the biblical idea of loving your enemies. This is represented in his control over Rock, the rainbow-colored peacock with enough pride to adorn himself with gold, and whose in-game gender is just the number 4, the Japanese number for death. Look into the mythology and you will find that the rainbow, peacock, pride, and androgyny are all symbols related to Lucifer, in a broader sense the unification of opposites. In other words, the belief that good and evil are the same and the resulting absence of objective morality. In this case, this is represented through the war concept that allows Tona and Amalthus to justify their own atrocities, with Rex's mastery over Rock showing his control over his own inner demons, in other words the ability to understand or love his enemies and his strive to salvage them.
Neither good nor evil. He is driven by a certain impulse. The despair that the man named Amalthus felt.
I see. So it was right. What I felt back then, I mean.
Rex.
Rex, what is it you desire?
What else? To stop Malos.
And if you succeed?
I'll punch him in his stupid face, and then probably get a drink with him or something. That's the 6th rule of the Salvager's Code. First have a punch out, then drink to forget. Once you've forgotten, the friendship's all set.